Opening Sellafield was a fucking mistake. The cabinet that authorised it knew that it was unsafe. They did it anyway because they believed that the bomb and Britain's posturing on the world stage were more important. That cost wasn't felt by the generation that created it. That cost is being carried now by the working class of the Northwest, by the children in the coastline villages near it, and by the Irish who are downwind of it. If the British government had stood up at any point over the last 50 years and said, "We accept this, we are sorry, here's what we will do now," that speech would have paradoxically saved the institution. The harm is the harm, it happened. The site exists, the leukemia is real. But it is recoverable in the long run once you can name it. See it, say it, sorted. If you are honest about what happened, you can change the institutions, you can take responsibility, you can hold people accountable, and you can move forward as a country. A mistake is forgivable. What is unforgivable is the lying. The thing that makes the British case pathological is not the station or the scary. It is the lying. The secondary structure that they built after they built Sellafield to manage the appearance of Sellafield. The 80 years of passive language, rephrased sentences and quiet omissions. The 30-year extension on the classification of those committee meetings. The deliberate structuring of the Redfern inquiry so that the cancer cannot be connected to the site. Millions of pounds that should have gone to the families that could have moved Sellafield by now, that went to public relations companies to figure out how to lie to you effectively enough so that you don't figure out your country is dying. Most people don't realise how expensive it is to hire communications consultants to make this kind of propaganda for the government. The entire apparatus of managing what you think of Sellafield is more expensive than what telling the truth would have been. It was more expensive in money, it was more expensive in talent, it was more expensive in just sheer moral exhaustion, because people know. Telling the public that you cannot comment on operational matters and this is a national security confidential exemption, don't understand, does not make the public think that you are handling this competently. It makes them aware that you are lying about something and something is off. And exactly like the cliff that is eroding underneath Sellafield, the state's legitimacy is crumbling because it was built on this lie. A Prime Minister that stands up and says, honestly, we have a leak, we have a plan, we have a problem, we will make the money. That Prime Minister wins hearts and minds. That Prime Minister will mobilise an army who will do anything to get the job done. After centuries of this bullshit from Westminster, people are tired and they hate you for lying. Not for making a mistake. The bond programme is, at this point, more administratively committed to managing public perception of the bond programme than it is to managing the bond programme. The DNO has strategic comms, the NDA has strategic comms, AWE has strategic comms, Sellafield Ltd has strategic comms, and a strategic communicator as its board director. Should you not have a nuclear scientist chairing the board at that organisation? Why do you have a comms person to do that job? The public is not stupid, they have known the whole time. Polling around Sellafield has been really fucking bad for decades. The state knew the polling was bad. The state's response should have been, we should fix the underlying thing that is causing the polls to be bad. But the state didn't. The state responded, we should improve the polling. Which in turn produces a worse polling number because the public can tell. People know you're lying. They can smell it off you. We are pattern detecting machines. You haven't convinced anybody in the last 80 years of what you're doing with these propaganda agencies. You are making them more angry because they know what you're doing. All you're doing is taking away the words, the trust, the shared reality. Working class people think this government lives on another planet. The public's relationship to the British state on nuclear is the same as the relationship that you would have with a person in your family who is an addict. For your own sanity, you really need to believe that this person will come around, that they will find salvation, that they will be able to turn it around, change what they're doing. But they don't believe the addicted family member. They have to watch them. They know what to expect from an addict. They know what the person is going to say to them before they've even said it. Anyone with an addict in the family knows that you lose your capacity to be surprised by their behaviour. You don't, however, lose your capacity to be exhausted. People are exhausted. And the thing the state cannot imagine itself doing and is terrified of doing is the only thing that would make anything better, which is to say, we fucked up. It's real. Here's the information that you need. We will stand in it with you. We will provide the support. The fact that no British Prime Minister of any party over 80 years has been able to make that speech is not a failure of their intelligence or the intelligence of the British state. It is a failure of the white man's imagination. They cannot imagine a world where the public would prefer the truth to this performance, and so they keep performing harder. And every time the performance fails, that secondary apparatus of lying gets bigger, while the actual remediation gets deferred and our children get sicker. A lot of our politicians are trapped inside of a worldview that was created for them by the British Empire, East India Trading Company. They believe that their place in the society relies on them maintaining this illusion of institutional legitimacy. And in that delusion, the state cannot admit that it made a mistake of this scale. But here's the problem that I need every member of the British Parliament to understand quickly. The recovery sequence that is required here starts with accountability, remediation, compensation, institutional change, and eventually forgiveness. That process cannot start while this lie is ongoing. That is not a moral preference, it is a structural fact. The lie is shielding us from the data that we need to do the cleanup properly. And every day that your taxpayer money goes into maintaining this lie is another day that the harm is being actively perpetrated. It is not historical. The structures at Sellafield are leaking today. The shell companies and circular structures that think they are protecting Sellafield Ltd from full legal exposure, they're operating today. There are still classifications on most of the most important documents and they are still being maintained today. The state prefers the framing that this was done by people in 1947 and that we have inherited it and we are just trying to manage it safely. The harm that is actively still being created by concealment is actually bigger and more unforgivable than the original mistake. Because what they are really doing when they hide and try to push it down to the next generation is they are stealing the only thing that we have left: time. Every Prime Minister since Attlee has had a window. The early ones had decades, but they passed the parcel like a hot potato. Macmillan didn't do it, Wilson didn't do it, Callaghan didn't do it, Thatcher didn't do it, Major didn't do it, Blair certainly didn't do it, Brown didn't do it, Cameron didn't do it, May didn't do it, Johnson didn't do it, Sunak didn't do it, and now Starmer has the smallest window of all of them, and he isn't doing it. In the 1990s, the MSSS was just an aging structure with a known vulnerability. It was not leaking, and the fix was achievable by simply deploying state-led engineering. If in the early 90s they had thrown the book at this, they could have created government jobs that built Britain up, trained people in engineering, and cleaned Sellafield quickly. They left it to the free market instead. Now it's 2026 and we have 2 cubic meters into the ground every day. The fix is only achievable at a higher cost and the engineering window is closing quickly. The Irish Sea is warming and the workforce capacity is now constrained by the free market. Now, the next Prime Minister faces the full damage with no warning and no time.